Hey there again, it's Nick here, and time to do the reflection number 3. And so for this reflection video, there's a number of questions that we have to answer, and they all come from chapters 2, 3, and 4 of the book Originals. So the first question is, why is it important to get the right type of feedback? So to begin with, it's important to eliminate the possibility of having false positives and negatives. Peer audiences are the best to eliminate that. So let me begin. With Segway, for example, the inventor, although he was a very decorated inventor with lots of patents in his name, he didn't test the Segway. The Segway had very little exposure. It was only truly exposed to select people on his team and to someone like Steve Jobs, like a very talented inventor, but not really someone in the same field, or he's also someone who's, in his case, someone who's very likely to support an outlandish idea. This instance would be a false positive, something that was meant to be great but wasn't. Another example would be Seinfeld, a false negative, something that was meant to be a bust but ended up becoming something very great. In this case, the audience, when it was meant to be bad, it was because it was researched by an audience, a test audience, that predicted the show to be terrible because they, instead of testing for enjoyment, they were micro-criticizing it and analyzing it too much. It was looked at, however, by Dean Kamen, who is a peer writer of comedy. And although he's not necessarily a writer of a TV show, he has experience in writing one-offs and specials and for things like Saturday Night Live. So as someone, as an equal, he saw himself to the creator of Seinfeld. He was able to see the good in what this show could bring. So that's why having a peer audience is the best. So now question number two, reflect on the story of Carmen Medina and the CIA. What was my reaction to her approach of the truth, to speaking of the truth and power? So I really admire Carmen Medina and what she's done. Like, she saw that there was a problem in the CIA, or an inefficiency, that is publishing everything on time, and she thought that making an interweb, sort of like publishing online, publishing intelligence and documents online, would make the CIA and other agencies more efficient. And she was very head-on, and I believe that going head-on is the best. And I also am a firm believer of having status to back up your power moves, like what she was doing. So I feel like it's something that I've experienced in my life. I worked at Target, and I remember when I would make a recommendation, or when I would talk about something, I would either be like scoffed off because I was the new kid, or just ignored straight up. Like, they wouldn't really give me the time of day to listen to, like, oh, maybe we can stack the boxes this way, or put the carts away this way. Until I started working there for months and months and months, and then and when I would train new people, and them knowing that I am the trainer in the department, they would listen to me and they would take my word to heart, and like they would follow my advice because they know that I've been there longer, and that I am, although we were the same level of team members, I'm the more experienced one. I'm the one who has seniority, I guess. So that's something that I have experienced, and another thing is about gender roles. In her case specifically, what's sad is how women aren't given as much range as men are in these sorts of situations. Women who are strong, or come off as strong, will more likely seem like a bitch, while if a man does the same thing that a woman like Medina does, he comes off as strong and brave and independent and everything, while Medina came off as a bitch because she was so forward about her ideas. But okay, next question. Define each of the quadrants on the matrix on page 80, hardcover. Okay, so I'm just pull out my book really quick and read off. So this Matrix is about a change in the situation. I'm sorry, not changing the situation. It's about approaching ideas. That's how I interpret it. And there are four quadrants. There are four. Yes, there are four quadrants. Ones are exit, voice, persistence, and neglection. And depending on what you do, or depending on what the idea will do, which could be change the situation, beneficial to the organization, maintain the status quo, or being detrimental to the organization, you should follow the quadrant, the matrix, for example. So if you think that your idea is detrimental to the organization, and would maintain, but would maintain the status quo, but you want to maintain. Sorry, if your idea would be detrimental to the organization, but you want to maintain the status quo, you should neglect the idea, leave it alone. If you want to change the situation, but you think your idea is detrimental to the organization, then you should exit, leave. I think this embodies everything quite clearly. I wouldn't add anything to it. So compare and contrast the two innovation styles, those being conceptual and experimental. The conceptual innovation style is a style that is used by people who think and act on it very quickly, while experimental is a style in which people take it slower and will think about the idea and fine tune it and change as they go along. So 3 points of comparison would be that the conceptual style is had by younger people, while the experimental style is more likely to be had by older people. Conceptual style is done right away, while the experimental style would be taken longer to do it. And people who are experimental tend to be much more thoughtful than those who are conceptual. So now I just want to discuss a couple of things from the chapters that stood out to me. And that was in chapter 2, just throughout the entire chapter, was learning that the great people like Albert Einstein, people like Beethoven, had to make a lot of content, had to create a lot, hundreds, thousands of things, just to land one hit, at least one, while they've had many hits in our eyes. And that's because we don't really see all of the things. We sort of only pay attention to the spikes, as the book says, in creativity that they've had. And another thing that stood out to me in this book was the exposure effect. And I think it's something that I haven't really thought about, but just reading it is just, even if it's a good or bad idea or irrelevant, the more you place an idea in the face of someone, the more likely they're going to like it, or they're going to be attracted to it or something. And I just thought that was interesting. That and the whole only paying attention to to good idea spikes were ideas that I haven't really thought of or think about. It's very intuitive. I understand it completely, but just interesting to see it discussed in the book. All right, that's the video, and cool.